Ryan and Brenda Woods of Paranormal Triage. Welcome to Nature of Reality Radio.
Thanks.
How did we meet? Facebook. I believe it was you who sent me a friend request, perhaps, and I decided to friend you, and I saw what I liked on the on your paranormal website, so I figured what great show guests you guys would make. I really love paranormal stuff, and I've experienced some paranormal stuff myself. Who hasn't? So why don't we this is a 40-minute interview because I've only got the low subscription of Zoom. So let's get on to some good stuff. Please tell us your life story from a primary source perspective regarding what you experienced that causes you guys to do the stuff that you do. I hate to say this, but please try to keep it short, sweet, and to the point because we need to get into some good material. We've only got 40 minutes. It's not Skype, which is now defunct.
Yeah.
So you don't have like a full hour. So please get the important stuff out, and then we'll get into some really good subjects. Knock yourself out. You got the floor. I'll shut up and myself on mute.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you for having us on the show. We are Paranormal Triage. We're a husband and wife team that had some personal experiences with some paranormal things that kind of led us into starting an investigation team. And then it's kind of spawned into this, um, search for your spiritual journey. um, we've had kind of a lot of I guess you would say, tragedy and stress and trauma that has kind of spawned into the personal experiences we've had. So,
So basically, what we lost some family members almost like back to back. So when we brought those ashes home, things started happening in our house. We were already kind of watching paranormal shows, but we didn't have our own thing going. But after that started, it kind of piqued our interest. So we bought cameras and started doing our own investigation in the
it
paranormal.
kind of started off as a hobby, just figure out what it is, try it for ourselves, and then some very deeply personal things happen and some experiences happen, and then that's where we decide to start Paranormal Triage. So, yeah,
Excellent, excellent. So you guys are based out of where?
Well, we're the northern
the real
California.
Northern
So
California.
yeah, we're Redding, California. We live in actually Shasta Lake City, but that sits basically right on Redding. So
A
above
lot,
Uh,
Sacramento, San Francisco, we're about 4 hours above San Francisco.
San Francisco, yeah.
all right, been to Northern California a few times. Myself for some conferences in the Mount Shasta area. Rob Potter recently passed away. He had some nice conferences in the Mount Shasta woods area, and there
Yeah,
were a
we
few
just did
par.
an investigation there
Oh,
Yeah,
just a couple of
yeah.
days ago.
We're only about 45 minutes from Mount Shasta, where we're at.
yes. One of the interesting paranormal things I remember seeing there, aside from orbs, there were a lot of orbs. Some guy caught on camera. There was also one of the nature lovers who I was hanging out with there. He was where the quarter moon was rising one day. He claimed that, and we saw this too. There was like a white dot of some sort on the very top of the mountain where the moon was rising, and he insists he knew what that was, some spirit that he had a connection to. I took the form of a white dot. I don't know, but exactly what is it about the Shasta area that makes it so paranormal intensive? Any
I
idea?
think on one point of it, it is a volcano. So there's a lot of energy in that volcano. It is an active volcano. Hasn't erupted for a while, so it's due for an eruption, but it's probably the world's second most active volcano altogether as far as how many times it's erupted. But then we also sit on a lot of indigenous land. So there's a lot of folklore there too. So you kind of have your smorgasbord of all kinds of stuff here, everything from aliens to Bigfoot to paranormal and so on.
Yeah, there's the story of the lost tribes, there's the Lemurians, there's extraterrestrials coming in and out of the mountain. Bigfoot is huge, and it's kind of like within that triangle, you have Mount Shasta, which is a big volcano, you have Mount Lassen, and then a mountain in Oregon. It kind of creates like a triangle there. So that's kind of an interesting kind of point of energy.
So yeah, it's got a lot of folklore.
Yes. Now, how? What have you guys? You guys have your own YouTube channel, do you? Because I'm
Correct,
looking at
yes.
your site, and okay. I think I better check that out myself. Maybe you can subscribe to it. See if you what I can find there. Hang on a second. I'm gonna go there right now and look at some of the videos here. See if there's Oh yeah, I see you got a few things, few interesting things here. Before before I quickly browse this and see what you got, why don't you tell me exactly what are the common things that you guys have caught on camera and or caught on audio, and more importantly, do you know what it is when you see or hear it, or are you not supposed to know what it is and you only have to
Well, so
hypothesize?
so in our own household, we bought a house in 2016. Um, and actually before we bought that house, somebody had actually passed away in the house and we didn't know about that. So that was just like one part of our story. And then my dad passed away and we brought his ashes home and we started catching like light anomalies in the camera. And toys started going off, things started falling off the shelves, and it was really weird. Um, and then 7 months later, I lost my daughter and we brought her ashes home. And we kind of got out some stuff that we had of hers, like a little bit of her ashes and a locket of her hair. We were asking her if she was in the home. And when we did that, we caught I guess you would say, a manifestation.
I would deem it a manifestation. I saw it through the lens of the camera, and the video's on our YouTube channel, and it's pretty intense. It manifests out of the carpet. It's a long kind of string orb looking dust thing that comes up, swirls around, and then passed right kind of, I don't want to say it passed through me, but right past me. And the energy that I felt from it was like something I've never experienced before. Very interesting. And that's kind of really where it kind of deep seated that experience kind of was like, all right, we're going to start figuring out more stuff here. And I truly believe that that was her daughter that came out. Because we have stuff like that happen quite often in our house.
Yeah, and my daughter, the one that passed, she also had lost a baby. And when we were catching these light anomalies in the house, it was like when you seen one of the light anomalies, you would see a second one, and it was childlike. And I always equated that to the baby that she lost, that they are now traveling together. So that's quite a common capture in our lens. If you see one, you see the other one kind of bounce off after her down the hallway. Our hallway is probably the most active area in our home. And we've been told a couple times that we have a gateway in our bedroom, which we kind of believe that, because I think there's a short on that. You can see our room is very active some days, and then some days you'll capture nothing. And it's not like our house. We live in a neighborhood, so we don't live in the country where there's a lot of dirt and dust, and we're pretty short on rain here these days. So you can kind of say it's not rain orbs, because orbs are kind of a big argument whether they're real or not. We're kept capturing light anomalies, which are kind of a little bit different, but
Yeah, and we've captured that same kind of version of that, what we call the manifestation. We've seen that same thing in the hallway, and we've also seen that same thing in the bedroom on camera. And then I've seen it also with my naked eye in the garage. I just didn't have the record button hit yet. We're setting everything up to check the garage. I was just making sure the cameras were good, and I saw it, but I didn't catch it like on video. But those are the things that has sparked us into all of the other journey, the pursuit of the spiritual awakening. What else is out there? How is it connected? And that's kind of what led us to Mount Shasta. Most recently, we've been doing stuff. We did something on Shasta Dam, which, that's the headwaters of California. It's the first dam you really get to, where the water's coming off of Mount Shasta into Lake Shasta and through the dam. So we did a pretty interesting video on that, and that just sparked us to want to keep going north up into the mountain and figure out what else was up there.
Uh, a couple people have said that Mount Shasta is the root chakra of planet Earth. Do you have any idea, being a resident of that area, do you have any idea where that comes from? Is there any truth to that, and why the root chakra of all chakras?
wow, that goes way back to like the early 1800s, if not earlier. Um, so supposedly there's a lost city in Mount Shasta, and it's called
Telos.
Talos. So you have Atlantis, that lost city that sits in the Atlantic Ocean. Well, there's also supposedly in the Pacific Ocean the town of
It
Lemuria.
was the continent of Lemuria at the
Continent
time.
of Lemuria. So those people who were supposedly, I think, giant people and were very spiritual, made their way to Mount Shasta, and I guess deem that their
So the the people that lived on Lemuria and the people that lived in Atlantis, the story goes is that they were having a battle because they had two different belief structures on how to deal with humans, right? At this point. So there was like this catastrophic war between them. They both lost their land, right? It fell into the ocean. Well, the people from Lemuria moved and reestablished the city and they put it inside Mount Shasta. So there's a movement called the I Am movement and the Lemurians, right? So they believe that that's where a lot of that power comes from. So when they talk about the root chakra being kind of the center and the epicenter of the growth for chakra spirit and energy, they say that's Mount Shasta because all of that energy from the Lemurians is within the mountain. And somehow that's connected to extraterrestrial. There's been a lot of sightings, a lot of video captured there, and that's kind of part of what our next step is to kind of figure how that connection works together.
But then you also have the indigenous side of the story.
There's a lot of native folklore, and a lot of it kind of melds together, some different names, some different kind of feelings, but a lot of it is very similar.
Yeah. No, but the indigenous, and don't quote me on this because the stories are so deep, you really have to, it's a lot of reading and research, and we've only barely
We've scratched the
touched it.
surface.
But the indigenous believe that the sun gods, I believe it was the sun gods created and developed Mount Shasta out of ice and all that kind of stuff. And they also had two chiefs that were at war. One was the chief of Crater Lake, and I can't remember the name of that specific mountain, but they were at war as well. And the chief from Crater Lake had actually fell in that mountain, and then it filled up with water, and that's how Crater Lake was created. And then they believe their sun god of Mount Shasta still watches over Mount Shasta. But it's such a deep story. I mean, he said we're just scratching the surface of it. And there a lot of people go missing up there. They wander off and not like they're getting lost. They're just on the trail and all of a sudden they're just gone.
There's definitely an energy about Mount Shasta when you go there, when you visit the mountain, when you visit the city. There's a different kind of energy there that's it's kind of hard to explain, but you definitely notice it and feel it when you're there. Not just the atmosphere of the people that are there, but it's just the way nature is. You know, you can travel different places. I've spent a lot of time backpacking in Yosemite, different places like that, but nothing feels the same as when you're around Mount Shasta.
I once had my cell phone disappear. It was Rob Potter's Secret Space conference. As soon as I got to the table, the signing table, I noticed my phone was gone, and it everything happens for a reason, they say. And it turned out, I guess I could say it was a blessing. Well, first of all, that was nature's way of saying, hey, well, the universe's way of saying you don't really need a phone here, so let's take it
Yeah.
from you, and it'll pave the way for you to get a more improved phone. So a disappearing object phenomenon is that common around Mount Shasta, and how can you explain it?
I, I've heard the stories of people missing and things going disappearing. Most of the research and stuff that I've read is about people themselves going missing. Several stories and stuff that's kind of unexplainable. One of the stories is these two gentlemen were actually climbing the mountain. They were above the tree line. So there's nowhere to like hide. There's nowhere to kind of fall into in the area they were at. And then the lead guy turns around and his buddy's just gone. No trace of him. Can't find his gear, backpacks. No trace of him falling. Nothing. Search and rescue. Look for him. He's just gone. And there's been multiple stories like that. People wandering
Hunters.
off.
Yeah,
Hunters just going missing. Just that's more of the disappearing stories that you hear from the Mount Shasta area.
And there's no way like people go, oh well, maybe animals. No, when you're fighting off a bear, we have bears and bobcats up here quite a bit, and Bigfoot. But if you get attacked by a bear or bobcat, you're gonna fight until the very end, and there's gonna be some trace of your
Be some kind of evidence.
You can have a finger or some blood, or it's not just gonna be squeaky clean
Yeah,
environment like that.
absolutely. There's going to be evidence of the encounter, and there was none in these stories that we've researched.
Now, you don't actually think these people that disappear, they're not actually dying, are they? They're just
You don't
transferring
know.
to another timeline, and they probably don't even realize they've disappeared. I mean, could it be like one of those? Well, this is a myth. Nobody really knows if it actually happened. It's based on what other people have said. But the man from Tared story about a guy from went to an airport in Japan. Was it? He was from a nation called Tared in Europe, which didn't exist, and he allegedly got very agitated when he couldn't find Taran on a map when he was shown it, but then he eventually disappeared back into maybe his own reality or something. When he shortly after he came to this reality, could you perhaps suggest maybe that's the same thing that's happening to the people, something like that, to the people that are disappearing at Shasta? They could be doing this, having the same thing that that guy, Tar Red guy, went through.
Absolutely. I mean, there all of the stuff, our pursuit for a spiritual awakening has led us to believing that, there's different dimensions, dimensional planes and spaces. I truly believe that. I grew up, religious, but I've kind of augmented and tweaked my viewpoints on things. So I truly believe that everybody has like a copy of themselves in just a dimension that's just out of reach that we can't see. And sometimes they can possibly cross paths, right? You could say that that's why you get deja vu, right? I also believe that when you're no longer in your human form, you go off into like a fourth or fifth dimension. And the stories talking about Talos and Lemurians that supposedly live inside Mount Shasta, they the belief is that they live in a fifth dimension. So if somebody were to find that kind of forbidden city of Talos in the mountain, you're not going to see people there. It's just going to be a space, They describe it as multi-level, big grandeur, gold and things like that. But most of people that are there, the Lemurians are living in a spiritual form in a different dimension. So I believe when people go missing, they're probably transferring into that different dimension. Whether they want to or not, I don't know. But you talk to people that have had near-death experiences, it's very dimensional and more of your consciousness moving in space. So I truly believe that I don't think people are just dying because you would find evidence of their body.
Yeah.
All right, I can certainly go along with that. Now I see you guys have a blog on your Paranormal Triage .com site. Three articles here. Well, we touched on this briefly, but what is an orb? That was from September of 2023. I think the important question here is is it fair to say that just like with UFOs and just like with crop circles, the same thing is true with orbs in that it's not one thing, it's a percentage factor or a certain percentage of this, a certain percentage of that. Well, I didn't read the article, but do you guys have anything to say about what an orb actually is? And specifically, my question, is
Well,
there a percentage
technically,
factor?
a couple of books that I've read, these are researchers that spent years and years studying orbs. And is what they found is when there were special events or any kind of event that was relevant, like a funeral or a graduation or a party, that that specific family member, whoever that was relevant to that time, could appear just in support of you and just saying, "Hey, I'm here." So,
And everything on Earth, as we see it, vibrates at a certain frequency, and everything is energy, right? So when we capture what people call quote unquote an orb, what we are seeing with the human eyes, we're actually seeing that energy captured through the lens,
right.
right? So whether you want to call it bending the time and light between dimensions is what you might be witnessing. That can be an argument, right? Or it's just the vibrational energy of that consciousness and that spirit moving through. Very similar to like, when you talk about crop circles and different things, there's so many different ways that that could happen. You can science it to death all you want with the actual physical science of how something is created or how the crop is laid down. Same thing with how your eyes see something like an orb. But you got to look at it from there's multiple ways that anything can happen, right? And science has actually proven that. So similar to crop circles, orbs, there's a thousand ways to skin a cat. There's different ways that they can appear. My personal belief, I'm leaning more towards the majority of the orbs we see is the actual energy change of bending that time and light, that the spirit is moving from one dimension to another, coming in contact with family members, or it's just, I mean, they could be good, they could be evil, whatever it is, but that's my belief.
I think the majority of them are good, but we're very cautious about what we call an orb, because I can show you one room and there'll be things that look like orbs all over the place. And then you have another room where you can kind of pick out what is not the normal travel of like a dust
Yeah,
ball
you
or
can't just
a
call
water
anything an
droplet.
orb. You can call it an anomaly, but you have to really do your due diligence to be able to figure out if it's dust, a bug, or water, or lens flare, or whatever it may be. You have to really look at all the different, hit all the check boxes to just say it's actually an orb.
What about the phenomenon rods that look like sort of insects in the sky? Are you familiar with those? Have you seen or
That's
heard
funny you
about
say
them?
that because our friend that we just did this investigation with, he has some footage of some aircraft, whatever you want to call it, that look like rod type floaty things
Yeah.
that look, he calls them vertebrae. He says when you zoom in on them really close, it almost like you see vertebrae in it. I've not experienced that stuff before. I mean, I've seen some things moving around in the sky, but not enough to make me go, oh, I think I just saw a
I would put
UFO.
it kind of in the same category as my thought process on orbs. I feel like what the human eye can interpret, right? Because your eye has rods and cones in it, and it, you know, your brain is your computer, right? And it's interpreting the different light structures of what we see to be within this three-dimensional reality that we live in on planet Earth. So when you see things, I believe sometimes those are the bending of time and light, and that's why the rods and cones in your eyes can actually interpret it. So it could be any shape. It could be any color. It could be anything. I mean, a rainbow isn't physically there. It's just a perception of what your eye sees. You can't touch or grab a rainbow, right? But you can see it.
Well, there's the science definite explanation for how a UFO is made. The idea that Leprechaun can't put his pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is true because it's not actually there. It's an illusion. So Leprechaun can't just walk there and put the gold there. It makes no sense. But the idea that the science explanation for what a rainbow is not entirely accurate because there's actually a more paranormal explanation behind why you rainbows are there. I've been to conferences and events where a rainbow forms in what appears to be above the area where the conference is. There was also a very significant yoga session that I was at once, and it appeared that a rainbow had formed. We had somehow formed a rainbow from that rather large yoga gathering. So here they say it's a bridge of sorts to the spirit world. Is it? I mean, and is the science explanation of how it's formed regarding angles of incidence? That's a word that science gives, but that's not really a proper way of I guess, lack of a better question, how accurate is mainstream science relative to the spiritual truth behind what UFOs are? I mean, what rainbows are.
Yeah, I think it's maybe, 20%, right? Because you're looking at it, right? So the bending of light and the way the prism is, that science part of it is true. But is it being manifested because of water mist passing through the light, causing the light to bend and change? Or is it being manifested because everybody is kind of spiritually connected at their yoga session, pushing off all of that energy to bring it there? So whether it's put there because you're running a sprinkler and you can see it, or is it put there because energy has manifested it? Is it a bridge? It's a bridge spiritually, right? We can't walk, even though it it appeared over your yoga session, you still can't walk on it as a bridge, but you might be able to walk on it spiritually through that path that it wants you to take.
Hmm. All right. See here. Nice. I'm sure Zoom will give me a warning regarding time. They've done that before, but let's move on to well, there's another article here. Ed and Lorraine Warren. Those are the people that passed away that
Hmm.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. We already got
Well,
into that.
those aren't our family members, but those are people that are significant within the paranormal community as how investigations kind of became a little more mainstream.
Yeah, they were kind of like the godfathers of the beginning of the paranormal. So, um, uh, Ed was in the Navy and he had a paranormal experience out on his ship. And when he came back, he had met his wife and she was a clairvoyant. So then after his experience on his ship, I don't know if the ship got bombed or if they got, I didn't remember, but something
Yep.
happened with the ship and people passed away and he communicated with them or whatever. And then they came back and decided they wanted to help people. Um, so they were the beginning of paranormal. So they're the ones that were behind the Exorcist movie because they actually performed an exorcism. That was the,
And that was kind of before people were taking equipment and cameras and different
yeah.
things into places. And this is, way back in time, but they're the ones that kind of started the whole idea of people being able to go to someone's house and actually look at paranormal activity from kind of a scientific and a spiritual point of view, both, right? Because Ed was very scientific with his approach, and Lorraine was a clairvoyant, an empath, whatever you want to call it. And that kind of connects with us too, because, Brenda has some empathic type things going on that she's still working on understanding. I don't have any of that, but I can definitely see things from more of a scientific standpoint.
Hmm.
But their whole goal wasn't to get famous. I mean, I guess that's a matter of opinion with most people, but they were very religious and they just wanted to help people and protect them and
Yeah.
keep people from harming themselves.
Okay. Now, death is a profound mystery. That's the last of the three blog articles you got here. We touched on this earlier, but I brought this up in my last podcast interview, and I want to bring it up again. Brad Johnson, who channels Adronis, a question he was recently asked in one of his Q&A sessions was, does the fact if you've lived a despicable, horrible life, does your afterlife is it going to be more unpleasant? And he didn't really answer the question. He basically, Adronis didn't answer the question. He basically just said, well, here's something to consider. When you pass away, for lack of a better phrase, are you a different person or entity than you are before you pass away? And he said, well, the answer to that question is no, you're not. You're the same entity, but as you were when you die, as you are when you are taking the form of a human. But he didn't actually answer the question regarding whether or not your terrible life that one could say is going to cause all sorts of bad karma for you is going to mean that your life after death is going to be any worse. Why he decided not to directly answer it, I don't know. I mean, but it kind of makes people would hear that and say, "Well, you just made death even more mysterious." So how do you get an idea why he wouldn't have directly answered the question? And
Well,
just
I would like to, a lot of people say that how you were in life is how you're going to be in death. But I have to kind of argue that point too, because when my daughter passed away, she was very ill. She was mentally ill. She died homeless on the streets. And she was a beautiful person. So I can't imagine she would go into another dimension being homeless and miserable and sick and ill. She was a very giving person. So I'm hoping, my hope is that we'll never know until we're gone. But my hope is that she did pass on and her spirit was healed and she'll be able to go wherever there's beauty and health and just something better than what she was dealt because she definitely didn't deserve that. um I think if you're just a horrible human being, maybe you do go to a separate dimension where those kind of people go. I mean, I can't imagine like murderers that do like heinous crimes are going to go to that spiritual realm and be able to just cruise around with people
Yeah,
that didn't do those things.
I don't think that, I mean, as you are in life, right? So if you live your life with good intentions and for the most part, right? If you make a couple mistakes here and there, that's not going to set you off. Even people that commit crimes and go to jail, do different things like that. I believe, kind of melting my two spiritual beliefs as I grow older in my investigations here. I do believe in a creator and a God, and I believe that there is some judgment there, but I also believe that he is all accepting. So most people, as they were in life, will be in death, meaning that if you're a jokester, if you play pranks and do things like that, that's how you're going to be in death. But doesn't mean that you're going to, you know, be a psychopath in death, right? But sometimes some of those people can never be changed. That is inherently who they are. And I believe that they live in a different dimension than everybody else.
And to kind of speak to that, that's how we knew my dad was in my house. After my dad passed, we brought his ashes home because the things that were happening Now, my dad being a logger and had just a corny sense of humor, you know, it was his type of stuff happening. Like he didn't like law enforcement. We had one little police car that would go off all the time. That wasn't, you had to push a button to make it go off. And after we brought his ashes home, that police car started going off late at night. And he would stay up late at night.
Yeah.
So they were kind of things that were kind of relevant to him. So is he how he was in life? Yeah, I think so.
That's so that question was it's nearly impossible to answer because it really comes down to your personal beliefs. Science isn't going to tell you that answer. We're not going to know until we're no longer in our human shell.
And we also had another investigating team come in to our house. And they confirmed everything that we were seeing. And it was all,
It captured all the same stuff.
yeah, and it just tied into my daughter's personality, my dad's personality, and everything that was happening with us. So it kind of confirmed that we weren't just seeing things or it was just our imagination.
Yes. Let's get on. We don't have much time here, maybe about seven. Let's assume we have 7 minutes left. There's one video here you got. Creepy message caught on a Zoom recorder. Now, to you, this Zoom recorder, how do you know if it was catching what it was? I mean, I guess you know because the way it sounds. Because when you hear these paranormal things, be bat, like a message within a message, it has like a creepy tone to it sometimes. And but you said it was a creepy message. Why do you use that word creepy? And can you give any take on what this? I didn't listen to this. This is 24-second video from 3 months ago. What did it sound like, and what do you think it
The E was
was?
backwards.
It's the screaming.
So no, it was actually played. In order for us to find that, we actually played it backwards.
Yeah, that's the
Right. So that's why it was creepy, is that it was, like you said, a message within a message. So that's like quadruple message, hidden underlined in there. Like they wanted to hear, but they didn't. So it's like a test to figure out if you could really understand. So when we finally hear it, it's low, deep tone, and it just, and a lot of what you do in this industry with paranormal stuff in this world is based on how you feel about things too, right? They talk about go with your gut, listen to your heart type of thing. When you hear certain things and it hits you just right, you get the goosebumps, okay, that's creepy, the way that that came out and the way we found it. So that's why we called it creepy. I don't really think anything is like, we haven't experienced anything that's truly like scary or really, hits you that hard, but there are like the things that give you like that you or creep factor, and that was
But we also come from the first responder world, so we're a little bit
we're definitely callous to crazy experiences because being as first responders for our day jobs, we're exposed to stress and crazy stuff all the time. So it takes a lot to make us feel creepy.
I think the only time that we ever got creeped out or scared was, I think there's a video called Harry Scary Bat. I don't know if the bat was scary, or hairy, but it was definitely unnerving, and that was the first time we ever left the location. But we also believe that had to do with the indigenous beliefs, and we believe it was a shapeshifter. So
Yeah.
scaring us off in Native
Yep.
American land. We were at a cemetery, so.
All right, one quick question, and then maybe we'll call it a show here. A lot of your videos here, the lighting, there seems to be a violet, purple, or even a pink tone to these videos, even a couple of green ones. Is that have something to do with what you're looking through regarding the camera? Because it seems like those colors are common in the paranormal world regarding video footage. What exactly is that all about?
Absolutely. So the stuff that's like that purple or pink tinge to it, that is, we have a camera called a Phasm camera, and it uses infrared light and infrared like spotlight to light up your area. It also has UV, so you can pick up different things, and it's what they call full spectrum. Normal camera doesn't see everything within the spectrum, that does, so it kind of comes across that light. The green one is a camera that's not full spectrum, but it uses infrared light, so it's different than night vision, where it's just going to be your blotches of white. So it allows you to kind of see more. And that's the majority of what we're doing, is we're doing it in the dark. So we're using infrared to light up our stuff.
Mhm. All right, thank you. Unfortunately, Zoom is not giving me warnings. I could have sworn the last few times I did this, they said you have X amount of minutes remaining, but they didn't do that this time. So I'm just going to presume that we started two, that it's going to end in 2.5, 3 minutes. So why don't we just call it a show? But before we do, any last things you want to get out, any future events, future occurrences that you want to make people aware of, please plug your website and that contact info and any other end of show stuff.
Yeah. So paranormaltriage.com is our website. All of our socials are linked to that, as well as a merch store of, we're not doing this to make money or get clicks type of thing to get famous, but take a gas to get to our conferences and things are good. We are going to a paranormal conference in the Ventura County, LA area in June
Yes.
coming up here. So that's going to be pretty cool. And we've got some more investigation videos that we'll be dropping on our YouTube channel and Instagram, and about the Pluto Caves, which is at the base of Mount Shasta that we just did, and we collaborated with another investigator, which is awesome guy. So yeah, that's kind of the up and coming stuff for now, and keep watching our stuff because we will come do random lives every once in a while, and then we will be doing some more investigations in the future.
Yeah, and I think the Paracon that we're going to is called West Coast Paracon. Is it West Coast Paracon?
Something like that, yeah.
Maybe it'll be on our Facebook. I'll be dropping in a flyer for it. So if anybody's in that area, they can come say hi.
Okay. I'm from the East Coast, so it seems like the great conferences are on the West Coast, but I'm going to try to keep it local for a few years as I try to pay off my debt. So then maybe I'll start traveling out west
Well, we
again.
always say that about the East Coast. We feel like you
Yeah, I
guys
feel like
have
the East
better
Coast
stuff.
got more.
I happen to think the West Coast one, East Coast may have more, but the West Coast ones seem to be a little better. No offense to the East Coast people, but anyhow, oh my God, there is a remaining time, less than 1 minute says right now. All right, so I might as
All
well
right.
call it a show now. Great interview. I'll do my best to get this uploaded to YouTube and Costa TV by tomorrow. I do have another interview tomorrow with the legendary Elizabeth April, but I will make sure that I get my interview with you guys uploaded first because I interviewed you first, so that's fair. Just maybe give me a day or two. Very busy guy I am. So take care. Namaste. Best of luck to you. Good luck on your paranormal experiences and good luck. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very
It's nice
much. Thanks
meeting
for
you.
having us on your show.